Be talking about identifying and non-identifying relative clauses. Okay, let's start by looking at the meaning. Let me start by asking you a question, okay? Look at the information in red. That lives next door. Is the information in red important? Okay, here we go. That dog that lives next door barks a lot. Okay, is that information in red important? Take 5 seconds to think about it. Okay, the answer is yes. Why is it important? Well, this is an identifying relative clause, and what that means is it tells us which dog is being talked about. We know which dog is being talked about because the relative clause that lives next door tells us. So the information is important, okay? And that's an unidentifying relative clause. It tells us what the subject is. Okay, let's move forward and let's look at this next sentence, okay? And again, is the information in red important? He owns a dog which he loves. Okay, take 5 seconds, think about it. Okay, which he loves, is that important information? Okay, the answer is no. It's a non-identifying relative clause. And what that means is that it's a relative clause that only adds information about the dog, but it does not identify it. It doesn't tell me anything that will help me find the dog or identify it, okay? It only adds a comment. We'll talk about this later. Okay, let's look now at the form of identifying and non-identifying relative clauses. Okay, so defining or identifying relative clauses don't have commas. For example, that dog that lives next door barks a lot. That lives next door doesn't follow any commas, doesn't have any commas. Okay, let's look at another example. The girl whom I met lives next door. Okay, the girl, no comma, whom I met, no comma, lives next door. So defining or identifying relative clauses don't have commas. Moving forward, non-defining relative clauses, on the other hand, have commas. So for example, my cat, comma, which is cuter than your dog, comma, is nice. Okay, you can see right here, which is cuter than your dog, has a comma at the beginning and at the end of the relative clause. Let's look at another example. She owns a dog, comma, which she loves. Here you can see which she loves, a non-defining relative clause, and it follows a comma. Okay, let's move forward and let's look now at the uses, okay? Defining relative clauses identify the subject. We talked about this. So for example, that dog that lives next door barks a lot. They are also used for writing definitions. So for example, here's the Green Party. Well, what is the Green Party? Well, the Green Party is a political party that cares about the environment. So you can see here that the Green Party is being defined, okay, and there are no commas. It's identifying. Okay, let's move forward now. Let's look at non-defining or non-defining or non-identifying relative clauses. Non-defining relative clauses add information. We talked about this already. My cat, comma, which is cuter than your dog, is nice. It's just adding information, okay. They're also used to add comments. So for example, the Green Party, which is useless, cares about the environment. Okay, here the comment that this speaker is adding is which is useless. Okay, not my opinion, but anyways, this is a good example. Let's move forward and let's look at correct and incorrect uses. Okay, so for the first one, is this correct? I'll give you 10 seconds. The woman, comma, who lives next door is hanging laundry. There should be an S here, but don't look at that. Okay, here we go. Ready? Is that correct? Take 10 seconds. Okay, the answer is no. Remember not to use commas with identifying information. Here, who lives next door tells me what woman, because who lives next door should be an S right here. My mistake. Because who lives next door is identifying what woman is being talked about. We cannot use commas. Okay, let's look at another example. In-N-Out hamburgers, which are really delicious, are sold only in California. Is this correct? Take 10 seconds. Okay, and the answer is no. Which are really delicious. It's not identifying In-N-Out hamburgers. It's only adding information. It's giving me a comment about the In-N-Out hamburgers, okay? And in that case, because it's a non-identifying, then we use commas for identifying information, but here this is not identifying. Okay, it's non-identifying, so don't use commas. Okay, next look at the last one. I have a book, comma, that is really interesting to read. Okay, do we use commas with this? Is it non-identifying? Is it identifying? Okay, take 10 seconds. Okay, the answer is, well, here's the problem is that we need to remember that we can't use that with non-defining relative clauses. We can't use that with commas. Okay, they don't work with commas. They don't follow commas. It's a punctuation rule. Because we can't follow that with commas, we can't use it with non-defining relative clauses, and instead we should use which. So let me do a quick review of the rules. Okay, for non-identifying relative clauses, don't use that. We just talked about that. Use commas. Use which for things. Use who for people. For identifying relative clauses, use that and who for people. Don't use commas. And that is more common than which. It doesn't mean that you can't use which. It just means that that is more common. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Hope if you have any thoughts, questions, or concerns, please email me. And I look forward to seeing you in class.